Representative Ro Khanna joins us this morning. Congressman, it's nice to see you, sir. You did get a nice little cameo in this Twitter files saga, and raising the issue. Really, I think the only person, at least that we saw in Congress, especially on the Democratic side, suggesting that those Hunter Biden files, or at least the article, should not be blacklisted. What have you made of what you've now seen from inside this reporting?
Well, Andrew, I believe that Twitter is the modern public square. And it's one thing to say they shouldn't have released sensational pictures about Hunter Biden, which I agree with. But to censor the New York Post, to prevent sharing of articles, that's just wrong. And I stand by what I wrote. And I hope that they will not do that in the future. Even though they are not obligated to live up to the First Amendment, they shouldn't be censoring journalists or things that they disagree with.
Do these new series of what might be described as tweet reports, lead you to have more questions, less questions? Are you glad that they're going through all of this? I mean, there's some people who think that this is great. There are others who think that this is political or something else. Others who worry about the privacy, by the way, of Twitter employees or former employees and the like, and email addresses. By the way, your email address, I believe, was exposed in all of this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that transparency is important and good. Look, I don't mind that it happened to me. It wasn't ideal. I could get further security of my account. I do think they need to be sensitive to non-public figures, to lower-level employees, and making sure their personal information and emails aren't being leaked. But here's the bigger question, Aaron. Republicans are rightfully concerned about censorship. Democrats tend to be concerned about respect. You don't want people on these platforms who are spewing anti-Semitism, who are spewing racism. And this is a conversation we need to have as a country. Right. What is that balance? And so I think the more transparency, the files being released. I've even said I'm open to hearings in Congress, in a Republican Congress, as long as they're not about gotcha politics. What did President Biden do? What did Trump do? But more about the broader questions of free speech and censorship.
Aaron's a much better writer than I am. But want to turn to talking about hearings. Sam Bankman-Fried tweeted this morning that he's willing to testify.
Did I say Aaron? I apologize. I apologize.
You don't need to.
Andrew,
by the way,
I'll
I'll take being mistaken with Aaron any day of the week. But to this point about SBF and this hearing, what do you expect that we could possibly hear? And do you expect him to testify in person?
Andrew, I did listen to your interview, which was, I thought, very thoughtful. I think there are two different questions. One is just garden variety wrongdoing. And many of us thought that Sam Bankman-Fried was innovative. No one would have expected, or very few expected, that what could have been going on is he was taking people's money and spending it without their consent. And that's just wrong, no matter what the industry is. The second issue that needs to be looked at is blockchain and having greater regulation. Right. Look, I have a lot of confidence in Gary Gensler and the CFTC. I think they need more authority. I think it's unfair to be blaming them. I think what we need to be doing in Congress is figuring out how they have more authority to actually regulate. And Gensler has been sounding the alarm about some of the excesses of blockchain for a long time.
Congressman, there's been some speculation that given Sam Bankman-Fried's donations, prolific donations, largely to the Democrats, that Congress went easy on him. And in fact, that maybe even you went easy on him. You'll remember Terry Duffy from the CME expressed deep skepticism about his business. And you went hard at Terry Duffy. Now, you've come back and said that he was right, and you acknowledged, I went on Twitter, you said, I want to acknowledge with humility his insights were greater than mine on FTX. But I think there's a lot of folks out there who say, was all of this a function of money? Had Sam Bankman-Fried bought off the Democrats?
No, in my case, he hadn't even given a single dollar at the time of the hearing. And the argument I had with Mr. Duffy was on what the technical definition of capital requirements was, which I believe I was technically correct, but he had broader insight over FTX being fraudulent. And I called him afterwards and I said, look, you had instincts that I didn't, and I acknowledged that. And I think, though, the broader issue was many people didn't see it. But I don't think, at least in the case of those hearings or in the case of most of Congress, that there was any sense of link to money. And I don't want to be calling out Republicans, but there are a lot of Republicans who got a lot of money from his super PACs. In my case, I got one contribution 2 weeks before an election that we returned that was a very small contribution and had no money from FTX or him anytime before or after the hearing that you're referring to.
Hey, Ro, you gave the money back. Some people have not given the money back. Others have given it to charity. I mean, it seems to me like that money should be given back to the bankruptcy court so they can try and make as many of the creditors, the customers there, get back as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, well, I think what happened in our case is a week before the election, we got a contribution from Sam Bankman-Fried and we refunded it. And so that was about 10 days later. It was a small contribution. I do think giving it to the bankruptcy court at this point would be fine. But, you know, the real way FTX was giving money was not in individual contributions of $2,900 or $5,800. $2,900 is what he did a week before the election to me. The real way is they were putting millions of dollars into these super PACs. And I do think the question is, where were they putting in the money to these super PACs? A lot of those elections, frankly, were against progressives. I was often endorsing the candidate on the other side, and many of those candidates didn't win, who Sam Bankman-Fried's PAC supported.
Right.
But my view is that ought to be looked at just as an issue of big money. And there were a lot of Republicans who benefited from that big money as well.
But Ro, in terms of the money piece, it all smells. I think we all agree that it smells. Why is there not a greater emphasis on trying to get rid of the money broadly? So that these questions about your credibility and others' credibility don't exist.
I don't think there's any question about my credibility. I don't take PAC money, lobbyist money. I haven't taken a dime of it. And like I said, the record is pretty clear. I haven't taken a dime of FTX money or Bankman-Fried money other than a donation at the very end, which we returned, which was after all the hearings and questions. But I do think there is a broader issue, which is these millions of dollars of super PAC money that are going into elections. That's why I've said don't take a dollar of PAC money. I've introduced the No PAC Act. There are about 7 members like me who don't take PAC money. And we need a 28th Amendment in this country to give us the ability to effectively regulate big money that is influencing our politics.
Right. Finally, I want to get to another big headline today. Microsoft's that Activision deal. The FTC suing to block the transaction. Which side are you on?
I am willing to see what happens here. Look, I understand the FTC's concerns, and certainly I'm not going to pronounce on what an agency is going to do. I never have done that in my career, and I understand their concerns on the concentration in the video game industry. At the same time, we do need to look at the jobs and labor issue. Microsoft came to a neutrality agreement with the CWA workers, and their CWA is actually very happy with some of the jobs and neutrality agreements. So I think there are considerations on both sides, and I just hope the agency will weigh all of those considerations.
How risky, though, do you think this is for the FTC, in fact? And the reason I ask is, if, in fact, the FTC were to lose this case, you know, does that open the door for all sorts of trends? I mean, there's a lot of people who are not pursuing mergers right now because they're just anxious about the FTC even bringing a case like this, right? But if they were to lose a case like this, the dynamic could change completely.
I think that's a good point. And I think that's one thing the FTC needs to weigh. Is this the most egregious point? But the broader point, Andrew, is that we need to make sure that Congress passes some legal change. You could have the most aggressive FTC. Right now, the judicial law is pretty deferential to businesses, to mergers. And without Congress changing things, and we haven't been able to pass the antitrust legislation, I think the FTC is always going uphill, and have been for some of the stronger antitrust enforcement.
Congressman, it's always good to see you. We appreciate you weighing in on all of these topics this morning. Have a great weekend.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.